Welcome to Furniture Industry News. Today is Friday, July 17, 2026, and thanks for spending a few minutes with us. This week, Washington sent our industry a warning, and for once it has nothing to do with a new tariff. A federal trade fraud task force has now recovered more than $1 billion, and the government is making it clear it no longer sees customs violations as simple paperwork problems. We will start there, because it may be the most important story of the week for anyone who imports. Then we will look at why design professionals are suddenly feeling better about the months ahead, what June's flat furniture sales really tell us, where freight rates are heading, and what a younger generation of shoppers is doing to the retail floor. Let's get into it. So, the big one. The Department of Justice says its Trade Fraud Task Force, which it launched with Homeland Security last August, has now passed $1 billion in combined recoveries, penalties, forfeitures, and charged losses. That is not from a single case, it is the running total since the task force began. And here's the part that should get your attention. The headline cases this week involved gold jewelry, not sofas or mattresses, but the direction the government is heading matters to every furniture company. The department announced it is creating a brand new enforcement section built specifically to investigate and prosecute import and trade fraud. Officials made clear that when they believe a customs violation was intentional, they are no longer content to settle for an administrative fine. They intend to pursue False Claims Act cases, criminal charges, and forfeitures. The things they say they are targeting read like a checklist for our industry: false country of origin claims, transshipment, undervaluation, misclassifying finished goods as parts, and evading tariffs and anti-dumping duties. We have already seen this play out in our space. In one case, an outdoor furniture producer agreed to pay $4.9 million to resolve allegations that it mischaracterized imported aluminum components to avoid duties. In another, a building products company pleaded guilty and was fined more than $6.3 million for its role in a scheme to route plywood through a third country to dodge duties on Chinese goods.
Now here is why this reaches your desk, even if you think your house is in order. The government has said plainly that the importer of record is responsible for the accuracy of an entry, even when a broker or an overseas factory prepared the paperwork. You cannot sign that responsibility away in a contract, and saying the factory told you so may not be much of a defense. The guidance is that companies are expected to audit their supply chains and to avoid deliberately ignoring warning signs. So when a supplier tells you production moved from China to Vietnam or Cambodia, the question is whether real manufacturing actually moved or whether the product is just being relabeled. And when one supplier's landed price is dramatically below what everyone else can achieve, someone needs to ask why. For the honest operators out there, this is genuinely good news. If you pay the correct duties, test your products, and document your sourcing, you should not have to compete against sellers whose low prices are built on false invoices. This enforcement push levels a field that has been tilted. The practical move this week is simple: know where your product came from, know what was declared, and know what was paid. Because in this environment, the cheapest container on the market might turn out to be the most expensive one you ever bought. Let's shift to something more upbeat. Design and construction professionals are heading into the third quarter feeling more confident than they have all year. According to the latest House Pro Industry Barometer, the design sector is showing especially strong momentum, driven by more project inquiries and new committed work. The measure that tracks expected business activity for the design sector rose to 68 for the third quarter, up 8 points from 60 in the second quarter. And the measure of recent activity jumped to 62, up 14 points from just 48 in the first quarter. That is a real swing in mood.
Now, it is not all smooth sailing. Project backlogs actually slipped a bit, down to about 4.7 weeks, and interior designers are running closer to 3.9 weeks. And the pressures are still very real. Roughly half of design firms point to rising product and material costs, and about half point to client financial uncertainty. Here's the part worth noting for how you work with the trade. When these pros feel cost pressure, their most common response is to raise their prices, and their second response is to get more selective about which projects they take on. Designers are also leaning harder on repeat clients and referrals. So if you sell into or alongside the design community, this is your signal to make your value obvious and your relationship sticky, because pros are consciously narrowing down who they say yes to. That optimism in the design channel makes an interesting contrast with our next story, which is the hard numbers on furniture sales. After 7 straight months of year-over-year declines, the furniture and home furnishings category finally pulled even in June. Store sales came in at about $11.3 billion, which was essentially flat compared to May, and essentially flat compared to June of last year. Year to date, the category is running about 2 points behind where it was in 2025.
Now, flat is better than falling, so this counts as stabilizing, but flat is not growth, and the context matters. Total retail across all categories rose in June, and no major category posted an annual decline. Auto dealers were strong, e-commerce was strong, and even sporting goods and hobby stores were up. So the takeaway is this: shoppers have money, and they are spending it. They are just choosing not to spend it on big-ticket home goods right now. That makes value and a clear reason to buy the whole game this summer. And keep an eye on the strength of online retail, because even the buyer who ultimately wants to sit on a sofa in your showroom is very likely researching and comparing online first. Your digital presence is doing sales work long before anyone walks through the door.
On the supply chain, there is a little relief and a lot of uncertainty. Container freight rates edged lower this week as the early peak season started to lose steam. Drewry's World Container Index fell 2% to about $4,547 per container, coming down from a nearly two-year high the week before. The route from Shanghai to Los Angeles slipped a bit, while Shanghai to New York held steady. Carriers are trimming sailings to keep supply in line with demand, and they have tried to push through some big rate increases in mid-July that simply did not hold. But here is the cloud over all of it. Tensions involving Iran are escalating again, and that puts pressure on some of the most important shipping choke points in the world. There are real concerns about vessels transiting the Strait of Hormuz and about continued threats in the Red Sea. On top of that, current tariffs are scheduled to expire on July 24th, with additional tariffs expected in early August. So the front-loading rush that inflated rates is fading, which helps your landed costs in the near term. But you have two known dates on the calendar and a security situation that just got worse. If you haven't done it yet, this is a good time to model your fall ordering against a scenario where rates spike again on a disruption. The value here is not this week's number. It is not getting caught flat-footed if the risk turns real. Now for a story that is a little unusual. Motion, the fast-growing maker of smart motion furniture, had to correct one of its own financial filings. According to the company's public correction notice, its Chinese parent amended its third quarter 2024 report to remove language that a court judgment found met the standard for commercial disparagement of a competing furniture maker. In other words, the company had to publicly walk back its own words. The passages it removed had referenced a U.S. patent and trade dress case won by a Wisconsin hardware maker involving an illuminated cup holder used in motion furniture, along with some pointed commentary about a rival that the filing has now retracted.
If you have been following along, you know Motion acquired the Canadian manufacturer Palliser back in late May, and it reported around $470 million in sales last year, up nearly a third from the year before. So this is a company on the rise. But the real lesson here is about the intellectual property backdrop in motion furniture. Cup holders and motion mechanisms have become genuine legal battlegrounds. If you carry motion furniture, it is worth confirming that the mechanisms and features on your floor are cleanly licensed, because an IP problem upstream can quickly become a supply problem for you downstream. Let's close with a look at the shopper, specifically the Gen Z shopper. There is a good piece of commentary making the rounds arguing that Gen Z is not actually unpredictable. Instead, this generation is simply unwilling to overlook the operational gaps that older, more patient shoppers used to tolerate. Weak fulfillment, a clunky checkout, a thin in-store experience, those were always problems. Gen Z just makes them impossible to hide. The research paints a clear picture. This is a group that shops intentionally and wants their purchases to reflect their values, and at the very same time demands fast, mobile-first, frictionless commerce. They are not choosing between values and convenience. They expect both. And here is the piece that matters most for us. This is not a generation that has abandoned the physical store. 3 out of 4 say that social spaces inside a store, like a cafe or a lounge area, matter to where they choose to shop, and about 2 out of 3 say they would spend more because of it. They are not disloyal. They are demanding. They will stay with and even advocate for a brand that delivers again and again. So what do you do with that? The message is that unified inventory, an easy checkout, flexible fulfillment, and a store that is genuinely worth spending time in are no longer competitive advantages. They are table stakes. And the best idea in the whole piece is this: stop treating your showroom as just a distribution point and start treating it as an expression of your brand. A store that invites people to come in and stay a while will convert better across every generation, not just the young ones. Gen Z did not raise the bar to something unreasonable. They just got to the future a little faster than everyone else, and they are pulling the rest of retail along with them.
That is the rundown for this week. If any of this was useful to you, please consider subscribing so you never miss an update. and share it with someone on your team who would want to hear it. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.